Morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the JoyScorePodcast with Connie Rose, our illustrious happiness and addiction coach, who's always a wealth of information and knowledge for us, and Dr. Joy, who is the brain and lead genius behind the JoyScore app. So today we're going to be talking about how to help friends get unstuck in various ways. So I'm sure we all observe friends from time to time that exhibit a cycle of behavior where they're doing something that we know either isn't unhealthy or isn't helping them progress in their life. But this could be like super innate in their personality. It could be, really quite deep. And it's hard sometimes to help friends through that process of identifying this stuff, because when it's so core to their personality, that I think people can get very kind of defensive about it and say, well, this is just who I am and this is how I operate. So with that being said, Connie, have you, I'm sure you've experienced this kind of stuff. What's your sort of initial thoughts on this topic?
Well, I think number one is like whenever you see a friend going through a difficult relationship is to just be their friend, because obviously there is so much emotion involved in relationship that sometimes you can't see things very clearly. So to just support them. But obviously our deepest triggers come up in relationships, and especially romantic. So it's likely going to be a challenging ride, but it comes down to working on yourself and having the openness to want to even be aware and change.
Yeah. I was thinking it definitely shows up in relationships, and I think it can show up in a lot of different aspects of people's lives. It comes down to a sort of failure of progression, as far as I see it. Like, you see your friend not making headway in their life, or repeating patterns of bad behavior, or just generally not making progress. And then from an outsider, you can see it. But even you can give them advice and things, but sometimes these issues are like so core. Like in the case of, let's say you had a friend who was, say, stubborn, right? And he's just, that's a personality trait. But like, how would you go about unlocking that person? Because stubbornness is a pretty difficult one, because it can be quite defensive as well, as far as the stubbornness can be a sort of protection mechanism around who that person sees themselves as, right? And I guess the trait and the defensiveness is, you can kind of separate it. But what do you think about sort of strategies to help people? Do you believe in kind of straight talk and kind of brutal transparency? Do you believe in kind of hinting and hinting and hinting, and then kind of building upon that? What do you think?
Yeah, generally, I mean, often I'll see the answer and be like, I just want to tell you, but that doesn't work. So because people can push back on that, and so the best way to get someone to see their own truth is by asking questions. I think just like loving, open-ended questions, not accusatory questions that are defining them in any way or defining their behavior. Open-ended questions that help them discover the truth themselves. And also you can show examples. So you can like compare, say, oh, in this other relationship, or like it's often easier when you compare it to your own experience. I mean, personally, I've had so many tumultuous relationships that when I see friends often, and we see our friends, other people going through things that we've gone through, because we recognize that pattern. So I can give examples from my own relationships and say, look, I didn't see that then. I was giving away my power. I was allowing myself to be manipulated, that sort of thing. I wasn't standing up for myself, and I can see you might be doing that right now. Or like asking them questions first. That's probably stage 2.
Got it. So asking questions kind of is a softer way to illuminate the problem, as opposed to you're doing this. Just say, do you think you could be doing this? I get that. And then humanizing it with yourself. Say, I went through something, what I went through was this. Does that sound similar?
So I have a bit of an experience with that, because I don't know if anyone of you have taught as a college professor, but I started teaching in 78. So the first thing I realized that you have open office hours. And those office hours are for any student to walk in without any appointment. These are open office hours. And you have to be there with your door open, anyone can walk in and just chat with you. So, interesting thing I learned, that I had to learn to be a psychologist. I mean, students would come and say, well, I'm having a problem. I say, well, what is the problem? You're trying to find the root cause of the problem. And some of them are just as bad as simple, or, the funniest one was this student is failing, And I say, what's the problem? He said, well, I'm married. I said, I'm too, He said, yeah, but, and this is a girl, young girl, but I have a crush on another man. So now I can't tell her what to do or not to do, because that's not my business. But I said, well, what do you want out of it? I mean, what do you see in it? So I kind of, more than telling her or have any judgment, because the first thought I had was, what are you doing? But I can't tell her that, And the other part is that she came to me as an advisor, because in your office hours, you actually function like an advisor for the program, for the education, for their life, and whatever obstacles they have. You have to be open. You have to understand what they want and somehow show them a direction to achieve what they want, rather than telling them what to do, So there's a big difference there. I mean, like Connie said, sometimes you talk to your friend and you know exactly what you want to tell them, but you don't want to tell them because that's going to be taking sides. And you feel like telling us, look, I've done that myself. It doesn't work, So it's a very sensitive, touchy rope that you walk on to stay friends, to not have judgment, to not tell them what to do, to just, if you can, help them see what you want them to see. So there's something else which I learned in the process, that in advising students, that perception is a reality to a human mind. So whatever it is that they are perceiving is the reality to them, irrespective of what the truth is.
Right.
And that's the most difficult part, because if the person, let's say for discussion's sake, that your friend feels that him or hers partner is cheating, okay? So if that is the perception, you can't do anything about it. All you can do is guide them to see with an open mind if that is the truth or not. But if they already believe that that's what it is, then you're done.
Yeah.
It's become their reality now. You can't help it.
Yeah,
So,
but again, I think you can open someone, even if someone is fixed like that.
Right.
You can open their mind by asking those questions, and like
Exactly.
when they're in like that emotion state and they've decided to believe through an emotion, you can bring them back down through looking at just clear facts.
Right.
Being
Right.
like, is this true? Let's work
Right.
through it in a
Right.
logical way.
So, the other thing which I learned was, what is most comforting to them or a person in crisis
Love.
is love, and also for them to trust you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like, sometimes I have a friend who's a brilliant psychologist, and he charges his clients a lot of money, and I think he overcharges them, but that's not my business.
Oh, another topic.
If I were to tell him, that'll be the end of our relationship. But the point is that, but he's very effective. Okay. Now, let me tell you something else about him. He doesn't say a lot. He, during an hour session, he may say 5 things or 5 words. But the way he looks at you and listens to you, you feel, my God, I can't find anyone better than him to listen to. and so he said, once in a while, a patient will say, well, doc, you didn't say anything. You say, yeah, but I listened to you.
Yeah, I used to get a bit annoyed with that when I went to the therapist.
And people find that capacity or way of listening and giving them a feeling of comfort, and the fact that you are giving them your full attention means a lot. In fact, I have a couple friends, and not that I'm trying to be cheap, but these friends are really good friends. Okay. So once in a while, I'll say, hey, can I see you in the sauna? So sauna is like our session, free session, psychology session for free, So you meet there, and either one of us can talk very openly about what's going on, And by the time we are done talking, we're fine with what's the problem, because we know the answer, we know what it is, we don't need any more help. We kind of found a person who's willing to listen to you. And sometimes talking about something is therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
You start understanding it yourself, what you want understanding before you start explaining someone what it is. In fact, I have done that in my classes. Like I'll have an idea, a concept that I kind of am 90% sure, but I'm still about 10% unsure. So I'll go to my class and say, listen, I have this idea that I'm struggling with, and I want to talk to you about it. And by the time I'm done telling them, I know it 100%, because this is amazing how explaining someone what's going on is very therapeutic.
I get that, but like, maybe I'm not a very good friend, but when it comes to like listening to people, I'm a friend, not a therapist, right? Luckily I have a wife who's a therapist, but I'm very solution orientated. Like, I don't want to just listen to people's issues. And if my friends are not like making progress
or sense,
it's frustrating, right? It's really frustrating.
I
Because I think that if there's too much kind of like problem-centered communication, then to me it's obvious. Stop doing that. Do this. But I think I've got some strength.
well, then you're not a good counselor.
No, I don't agree. I mean, because I that's something that I used to get annoyed at when I went to a therapist and they would just listen and not give me like any practical solutions and stuff to do during the week before our next session and stuff. And so the way I coach is that I do a combination. I'll listen to them very intensely, ask those questions, and we'll work on how to create actual solutions and the practical things that you can do during the week. And I'll also like give them like a hypnosis or a meditation or EFT tapping or like breath work, something practical to unlock something in that issue, in that problem.
I agree. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But with friends, what I'll do is I will be that listening person. But again, like I'll listen whether they want my advice, and I'll sometimes ask, "Do you want my advice?" Because I don't want to give my advice when it's not welcome and when someone isn't ready to hear, because that
Or
never.
if they're not asking, because sometimes they're not asking for advice,
Right.
They just want a sincere person to be able to talk to.
Yeah, and just to continue to support them, because often like in friendships, a friend will go to another friend and be like, "Oh, I'm definitely leaving that relationship. They did this, they did this, they did this, they did this. I'm leaving. That's it." And then like the next day they'll be back in that relationship. But that friend has now heard all the horrible stuff about the other person and the issues, and now they've still got to be friends with their friends.
The other thing that
support them is key in that process, because that happens, and sometimes someone needs to break up with someone many times and it just eventually happens. I know I've tried to leave relationships many times and gone back and been like, why am I doing this? So I can sympathize when I see other people.
Well, the other thing is, at least in my case, I would recommend, if let's say they're talking to you today and they're dead serious about doing something and you heard it, you kind of not sure what to tell them, or you feel that they are making a decision hastily, or just jumping to the conclusion, I sometimes would recommend, I say, well, do you want my advice or opinion, or you just want me to listen to you? And if they say, no, what do you think? Or I say, well, I don't know if I want to tell you what I think, because that may not be what you want to hear. He said, no, you can shoot, just tell me. Or, and after that, you can still say, well, listen, my recommendation is you sleep over it. Don't do anything today. Just wake up tomorrow morning. You've had a chance for your mind to digest it, and hopefully you have a better sense of what it is tomorrow, because sometimes they are in this anger or frustrated reality and just bursting out the seams, and that's not a good state to be in.
Yeah, any like stage like sleep or meditation that like resets the
meditation
mind
is good one. Yeah.
But going back to the listening thing, sometimes you can it can be kind of damaging just to let a friend go on and on and on and on and on in their state of negativity and complaining, because then I've seen this in relationships, friendships, like two people can support each other's lack of growth, right, by letting them complain, letting them go on and on and on, and instead of like calling them out and being like, is there a kinder way to look at this to yourself or the other of your partner? Is there another way? Could there be another possible positive?
Yeah, I guess that's what I was getting at as well, about the cycle of kind of like negativity becomes a kind of cesspit of just negative emotions that you don't get out of, and then that amplifies the feeling of being trapped in that situation, because it becomes like a sport of talking about a problem as opposed to like, what is the actual solution to this? What do you feel, guys, about like radical transparency, about the idea of being completely candid, direct, and straight on to the problem directly? Because I've done some of that in my life, mainly in a manager capacity, not in a kind of, clearly I'm not a therapist, but mainly as a kind of manager helping people like grow. I've been radically transparent about their, shortcomings and or opportunities to get to the next level. What do you guys feel about that approach? I guess it, you know, anyway, what do you guys feel about it? Do you think that's a viable strategy? Because from your approach, Connie, it was much softer, right? Like asking questions rather than, you know, just coming straight out and attacking the problem.
Yeah, it's funny because I used to be the person that just was like, "This is your problem," and basically, like the reaction was always generally very bad.
Right.
So they would backlash on that. So I changed my approach, but I think it's case by case. Some people like, well, what happened I noticed is that when I would say this is your exact problem, they would get the bad reaction and they would like push me away, and then a couple of days later, or maybe sometimes even a year later, would say, yeah, you were 100% right about that. And like sometimes they'll react because of it's so true. And the truth hurts sometimes.
Right.
And they have time to process it when they're like laying in bed looking at the ceiling thinking about those words. But I'm not sure if that's the best method.
Right. I get that. I've seen that as well. Totally. I think it depends on the person as well. Like, you know, are there, and it depends on the issue. I think certain issues, like a lot of work related issues, are not that important, right? But when it comes to like relationships or life or serious issues, then I guess it's more sensitive and it's more touchy, you know. And then you know, when people are seriously stuck, they have to do the work themselves. Like even as a friend, no amount of pushing or telling or anything is going to get them unstuck. They basically have to come to this process themselves and figure out how to get unstuck. They have to, you know, come to the epiphany themselves, right?
Yeah, and you can lead by example, and like, and you can go to me and my friends and I, we go to things like sound ceremonies and meditations and things like, and draw shadow work and all this, like, so we do that as a community. So it's, you're kind of influenced by that. But if you're not in that community, it's slightly more challenging.
So that was very, very good and helpful. I think we have some good discussions on how we can help people, because sometimes, in fact, it happens to us all the time, but we just don't know how to handle it, you know.
Yeah. And of course, like suggesting getting professional help and coaching, you know, advice and help, like just really, really does help.
Yeah. So you basically said, to summarize, that your approach would be, the first thing would be questioning, which is questioning the behavior that someone's exhibiting that you see from an outside as potentially not advancing their life, you know. And then a step beyond that is
let's say support. Just support them, number one.
Support. Okay, so support number one, support and love number one, questioning number two, like humanizing and empathizing with your own examples is kind of number three. And then, you know, being patient, being a good listen, and professional help number four. I'm going to write that one down. Okay, well, thanks, Connie. It's been great.